Yes, okay. It's working now? Okay, have your fun now, because at the end you may not feel like having fun. So. Just kidding, okay? Okay, I'm going to talk today on something a little bit differently than you've heard me talk about before. And I'm going to give a lesson on James chapter 3. And I'm giving this lesson because I believe that what's in James chapter 3 is one of the most needed lessons in discipleship out of almost anything in the Bible. For a discipleship course, we need to understand, we need to know James chapter 3. James chapter 3 is about the evils of the tongue. And so I could be up here and I could tell you different aspects of how the tongue is a poison. How the tongue, the warning against the tongue in different areas, how we cut down other people. Sometimes we use the tongue to cut down ourselves. We use the tongue for accusation, to speak falsehoods, all sorts of things. So I could probably do a whole seminar on the tongue. And it's good that some of you younger children or you older children are in here today, because I believe if you can learn this lesson early in life, this lesson is going to help you so much in your life. Okay? So I'm going to start out by reading James chapter 3, almost all of it. It says, "My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many things. If any man does not stumble in word," that's a logos. If he doesn't study or stumble in word, he is a perfect man. That word perfect means, in the Greek, it means a complete. You're complete if you don't stumble in how you in word. Able also, if you do not stumble in word, it says you're able also to bridle the whole body. That's a profound statement. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Look also at ships. Although they are large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member, but it boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members, that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. And it is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth fresh water and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus, no spring yields both salt water and fresh. Now, I am going to take a particular aspect of this, and I'm going to share verses with you. And what I'm going to share with you out of this passage is stewarding the amount of words that come out of our mouth. And through my experience in life and through my experience in leadership, and this is a leadership lesson for you, but all leadership lessons are also living lessons. We need it as leaders, but we need it because we need to live what we lead. And one of the things that I have worked on myself, it has been a discipling thing, and for Ruthie also, who's going to share a little bit later about this process of learning to steward our words, because stewarding your words is very important. Because the words that come out of our mouth, The amount of words that come out of our mouth will affect our personal relationships. The words that come out of our mouth will affect things in our family. Indeed, and I'm saying not down on the list, high up on the list, it can affect marriage and marriage relationships. And so what does this mean? So I'm very conscious today not to bring any condemnation or legalism on you. And that was my biggest struggle with this. How can I share this truth that there's not condemnation and you don't feel like, wow, I've done something wrong or I'm a clump of dirt? No, this is a journey we're all on. Ruth and I are still on this journey. Even sometimes together, we're on this journey with each other. And I'm calling you to a more excellent way, and perhaps a more excellent way of training your children in the stewardship of the tongue. Proverbs 21:23 says this: whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth. But then it says this, but only let out of your mouth what is good for edifying people, building people up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. How many of you have been in conversations or relationships with people, or you're with somebody, and the amount of words that comes out of their mouth is exasperating. It's exasperating. And you get with them again, and it's exasperating again. And so people will come and tell you, say, oh, I'm not getting with you because you overtalk, your talk is exasperating. They just won't get with you anymore. Now I'm being very real. This is not a slight problem. I'm going to give you some examples, but also I want to tell you that I've had to work on the art of listening better. I've taught my children, I think every one of my children know this, that I say in any normal conversation, and when I say normal conversation, I say normal conversation because there's sometimes I'm called to talk. Sometimes you're designed to talk. Today I'm designed to talk. You're not going to talk, okay? But it's appropriate. But I say in any normal dialoguing, friendship, conversations, family conversations, try not to ever say more than 49% of the words. It's how we esteem other people more important than ourselves. James 1:26 says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, he deceives his heart. And one version said, this person's religion is worthless. That's pretty tight. Okay? David prayed, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. This is a verse that I've remembered many times. Proverbs 17:28. It says, even a fool who keeps silent is considered to be wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Proverbs 7:19. When words are many, transgression is not far behind it. But whoever stewards or disciplines his lips is wise. I have more verses here. Now, what I'm talking about is not the normal times of conversation when you get together or when you're talking. Or when you're talking on a normal basis, and all of us talk too much sometimes when we say and we go back. That's relationship. That's cool. I'm talking about something that I always call in the box and out of the box. It's good for parents to understand behaviors of children that are within the normal journey of growing up. They do wrong, they may tell a lie, they may cheat, they may steal, they may do something, but it's in the box of growing up. Adults have the same thing. There's certain things I'm going to do because I am intrinsically flawed as a person. That's called in the box. I'm human. I'm growing. So are you. We're not perfect yet. We may be complete in a biblical sense, but there's always room to improve. And whenever you get to the place where you think, man, I've arrived, God will drop so much more on you to humble you and even humiliate you sometimes in a good way. But then there's those things that are outside of the box. It is the lack of stewardship of words that is based on self-protection. It's based on insecurity. It often comes out of a wound. It's insensitive. And it dominates people. And it violates Philippians 2:3 that said, let everybody esteem another person as more important than yourselves. Danny Silk calls them people who are out of the box. It's like a machine that happens. What happens? I call it pica. Pica is when your brain creates a fix for some pain that's down inside of you, that's unresolved. But the fix, I mean, this is psychology. This is every addiction. But the fix that the brain creates to try to fix something is totally unrelated 100% to what the real problem is. But what happens, it can create a neurological pathway to try to fix that wound, and that's not the way to fix it. For example, Ruthie, when she was expecting, she was low on iron. We didn't know that, but she craved ice. She was, addicted to ice. In the middle of the winter, we're driving down the street, and she says, go to Turkey Hill. Go to Turkey Hill because they would give free cups of ice. You know, I go in here and say, could I have a free cup of ice? Oh, weren't you in about 2 hours ago for it? Yeah. I sweat a lot. It's 15 degrees outside. It's my metabolism because of my muscles, Don't do that. My wife just That's called pica. That's what the brain does. And sometimes, literally, when I hear someone that is just a conversation dominator, it's outside of the box. It's usually because there's something either self-centered, narcissistic, or rude that's driving it. And I guess I just got real frustrated with it. And I wrote it in my book, Kingdom Culture. I have a whole section in my book on the overtalking, because it's a leadership book. And the people that I mentor in leadership, I tell them, I said, this is a two-way street. Okay, Ruthie and I are giving machines. Okay, we're a two-way street. Hey, Wayne, have I impressed that upon you? That it's a two-way street. Yeah, absolutely. You're good at it, though. It's not just, with Wayne, it's a two-way relationship. That's what we need to have. But how many times have you gone to people and they've sat down and they say, oh, let's get together, and you sat down with them and they talked blah, 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 about themselves and what they're doing, or and then, a little break and you start talking about yourself and they say, yeah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, and then they go right back in talking to themselves, blah, blah, blah. There's a certain person that Ruthie talks about in ministry. No one, I'm referring to nobody in this church. Any example I might give has nothing to do. But there's a certain person in ministry that calls her, and Ruthie can be on that phone in an hour, and I kid you not, she won't say 15 words. And this person's in ministry. People, I know this is difficult, and it's not for all of you. But you've all been victim of people who have been insensitive and have been consumers. And I say we, as believers in Christ, according to James chapter 3, need to all continue to learn to steward our tongue and learn how to listen better. I wrote this And I wrote this for my book, my part 2 of Kingdom Culture, which I haven't written yet. And I talked about I talked about different profiles of communication. The first one I have here is, I got them out of line. Okay, the first one is dialoguers. I rate this style of relational communication the highest and the healthiest. In this category are those who know how to listen, but also know when to speak, impart, give, and contribute to the conversation. My perception tells me that most people enjoy conversation with dialoguers the most. The problem with dialoguers is sometimes when they need to talk. I'm jumping ahead. Dialoguers are the ones who command the most respect, and they are the ones who transmit the most value to those they are communicating with. Dialoguers respect others by drawing others into the discussion by pausing and waiting for response or asking for response. Dialoguers are good at asking questions of others to facilitate mutual participation in a conversation. Questions such as, what do you think about this? How would you approach this topic? Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? We've talked about me, but how about you? And then they listen. Dialoguers know how to listen and how to sift their words so that what comes out of their mouth is full of grace, meaningful, and mutually relational. Quite often, dialoguers are those who have a heart for others. I'm not going to read all of them. The next one is listeners. I rate this style of relational communication a notch below dialoguing. Highly valuable. We all need listeners, but as a general profile, I'm referring to listeners of those who choose to be an ear to those who like to or need to talk. They may dialogue some, but usually allow others to speak 70 to 90% of the words. Good. But guess what? Every relationship needs you and your opinion and your thoughts. And I'm talking about general relationship. The next one is tellers. I can tell you, being a teller is good. Tellers have their virtue and their place. I am often placed in situations where I am required to be a teller. But tellers, without embellishing their profile with the art of dialoguing, are limited listeners. They can be masterful interpreters and conversation dominators. They rarely look at another person in the discussion and say, what do you think? Tell me more so I understand. It goes like this. You mention a problem or issue that came up in your life to a teller, and the teller gives you the answer, tells you the option, tells you what is true or false. The problem is that the tellers don't often listen enough to hear the whole story or fully understand your heart unless they have a personal agenda or a need to listen. Sometimes they don't even ask you if you want to be told or taught. There's more on that. Broadcasters. My wife, Ruthie, recently met with a friend. She doesn't see her much. She lives out of state. But Ruthie prioritizes time with her. When I asked how her meeting went, I already suspected the answer. Her friend told her what she was doing, struggling with, thinking about. She talked about God, things, and more. One problem, the friend, normal for her, didn't take the time or the consideration to ask Ruthie how she was doing or even care to listen when Ruthie started to talk. Broadcasters are similar to tellers, but they are not telling or teaching somebody as much as they are spewing their thoughts, opinions, emotions, and experience, usually with a limited regard to how their verbal emissions are being received. This is very practical, but I think it's very important as in our living and leading. The stewardship of words, and when you're with a broadcaster, how many of you sat with broadcasters, and maybe the broadcaster that you were talking to was me? Could very well be, because we're all still working through this, but how many times have you sat there and inside you're saying, I don't care, and you want to say, and telling every little detail of every little thing and making a story that should take half a minute, 5 minutes. I don't care. I couldn't resist this. Does it sound working? Oh. Okay, never mind. Just forget it. No problem. I had a little video there I wanted to show you. Anyways, there's more. I've often said that one of the hardest blind spots in people to recognize is being a dominant or insensitive in conversations. Though I'm cautious not to judge people, I usually can discern volumes about a person sometimes after just one conversation with them, and so can you. In the not too distant past, again, not from any part of this church or this, Ruthie and I met 3 times. This happened in the last couple of years, where somebody wanted to get with us. We went out to dinner or we went somewhere, and these were important people that we hadn't seen for a long time. And we loved them and we listened and we enjoyed it, but we left tsunamied, without any kind of, you feel selfish because you say, wouldn't it be nice if they just thought to, after not being together for so long, to care, say something. And most of the time we don't say anything because we don't want to be judgmental or down something. But it hurts sometimes, And one thing about each one of those, in both of the 3 of them, but I'll say 2 of them especially, it was the minister, the man talking, telling all about what God is doing and everything, but never once not once. And you tell me if I'm lying, Ruthie. Never once looked at his wife and said, "What do you think?" Or when he's talking, look at his wife. His wife was a non-person. But it was their wives, okay, both. And it was obvious that person had just taken on a format that, in these kind of conversations, I'm not important. It can happen from men to women. It can happen women to men. And we saw a great victory of a couple that came to take back your life. And she came to us and complained and says her husband just doesn't talk much, give him a feeling. It was like, we had to nicely tell her we can't get a word in edgewise. I mean, she had flapjaw syndrome off the scale. We saw them a couple years later, and they were thriving. God healed the heart, and when He heals the heart, He'll heal the tongue too. And years ago, I went out to Iowa. Well, I'll tell you before I went out to Iowa. When I started a church. Planted a church in 1991 in Lebanon that I pastored for 9 years. And there was another pastor that we knew that myself and my assistant pastor were getting together with some other pastor. And since we were new, we were getting together with this guy. And we'd get together with this guy, and he'd talk about all the things God is doing. And then we'd start in and say, these are the things that we're going through and the struggles and these. And within 10 seconds, he railroaded the conversation to take it back. And this was the way it was the first time, the second time, the third time. There was no fourth time. We realized it's like, can't do this. So I go out to Iowa after a couple years after I stopped pastoring that church. I went out to Iowa. And a lady came to us. We went out there, and we only knew one couple, but this lady we didn't even know came, and I said, "Who are you?" She goes, "I'm Grace." She goes, "I was praying for you to come." I said, "Oh, you didn't even know?" She goes, "I know you." She goes, I was praying for you to come. I'm taking you to church in Cedar Rapids." I said, "Oh, she didn't even ask us, I'm taking you to church." So we said, "Great, we'll go to church." And we went to church, and I was in the ministry, and she introduced me to the pastor of the church. That I was in the ministry and blah, 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 all about me. And immediately the pastor looked at me and he said, "Could we have breakfast Tuesday?" And right away I knew. He's going to suck me into his kingdom and see what he can get out of me and my ministry. It was just a typical thing that I've always experienced, but I said, yeah, I'll go. Meet at Perkins, so we met at Perkins, Cedar Rapids on Tuesday, and never talked about himself. Got into my heart. Talked about me. And when I tried to talk about him, he just railroaded it right back to me. I knew him for years. His name was Bill Nissen. Years and years. And nothing ever changed. I was with him when he was with other people. And whenever you get into a conversation and someone says, how are you doing? They'd say something, he'd say, how are you really doing? And he'd go to their heart. He was always going to people's hearts and listening. A very powerful man. Was a senior pastor of Francis Frangipane's church. Some of you have heard of Francis Frangipane. He was a very influential, powerful guy. He was about 10 and a half feet tall. I mean, the guy weighed 1,000 pounds. I mean, big. Lucy would have hugged him in his belly button. Still a friend. In fact, just 2 months ago, I did a live stream with him. On something he's doing that's on YouTube. We're still friends, and he's still the same way. I have a little challenge for you, Ruthie. Hold on, I'm going to read this here. We had a lot in common. This guy I met last week. How about some breakfast down at Rusty Creek? I have great anticipation for this rendezvous. I get a bit excited about meeting someone new. At first we chatted small talk, then he began to share all sorts of things about himself. I sat silent in my chair. I thought he might be lonely for a listening ear, but after 15 minutes, I hoped to disappear. This man indeed was gifted. He suddenly told me so. He suddenly let me know. He had some great opinions. I know, he told me so. He never thought to ask me, what's happening with you? He never paused to care about my point of view. 3 times he interjected something that I knew, to which he listened intently for 1 second, maybe 2. He wowed me with his stories, impressed me with his wit, told me all his history, talked, and never quit. His life was helping others, but somehow he couldn't see that in his selfish focus, he disregarded me. A man of great distinction, like no one else, I bet. A man of many syllables I wish I'd never met.
Hey, Bruce. You're talking our ears off.
Huh?
You remind me of an old shoe that I have. It's all gone except for the tongue. Didn't you say Ruthie was going to talk?
You said I remind you of an old shoe. What?
An old shoe that I have at home.
Oh, old shoe, yeah.
It's all wore out.
It's all wore out.
Except for the tongue.
Except for the tongue. And you're interrupting my message to tell me that.
Well, I think you're 49%. And you said Ruthie's going to talk.
All right, Ruthie, you come on up. Come on up. Listen, the audacity of that guy. What's wrong? Since you don't think he's a creep, we did have that plan. Ruthie, tell us about some journey you've been on.
Well, the reason Bruce is teaching this...
Is it? Oh, I don't think you're on. Are you on?
Hello?
No. No?
It doesn't work?
Is this on? Yeah, that's on. Hello? Hello? Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
The reason Bruce is teaching this is because he lives with me. I'm saying that very seriously because he walked me through this journey and he changed me completely, or the Lord did through him. And I say that because I had a lot of insecurities. I did not know who I was when we married. And so if I would get with you or talk with Bruce, I wanted to impress you because I didn't know who I was in the Lord. and I wanted you to like me and all that, so I talked your ear off.
Hold that real close because I want you to get on that.
And I say that because sometimes we talk too much and we don't even know it, but we're trying to get close to somebody. And we don't realize that what he said was what I needed. So in our talking at home, he would say, well, what did they say? And I said, well, they didn't say anything. And then he'd ask another question and say, what did they say? And I said, they never answered it. And I thought that was okay. I thought it was really connecting with people because I was connecting. But I didn't give them a chance to connect with me. And Bruce and I have done lots of counseling together. And years ago, he said, I would say on the way home, Bruce, you didn't say much. What's wrong? He said, this was one time after we had counseled for quite a while. And he said, Ruthie, I had no chance to jump in. Anytime there was a pause, you jumped in. Ooh, that didn't feel good at all. But it sure pierced my heart. And
It pierced me for a little bit until you got over it. Okay, I'll let you talk again. Never. I'm going to be quiet. You do all the talking. Bruce?
but we were at a dinner meal, and we had been invited by some friends, and we sat at a table, and there was already a couple there. And the couple that was there, the man was quite large, tall and large, and they started talking, and one of the things they enjoyed doing was ballroom dancing. And I looked at that guy, and inside I said, how in the world would he ever ballroom dance? It just didn't go through my mind. Anyway, as he got talking with us, he went on to something else. And Bruce or I looked at him and said, you said we used to like to. Why don't you do ballroom dancing anymore? And he said, in ballroom dancing, the guy has to lead. And she wouldn't let me lead. So we stopped ballroom dancing. What do you think?
And then we got to talking about it. I said, Ruthie, that's it. I said, when we're counseling, when we're talking with people, you don't dance with me. You don't let me lead. And that doesn't mean you're out of the picture, because there's times that Ruthie is supposed to talk more. And that clicked in your mind. Go ahead.
That clicked enough that it taught me something very, very deep. But when we would go into a counseling session, I would look at him and say, let's dance. And in saying that, it not only put it in my mind to be quiet when I could be quiet, but it also released Bruce to lead. And so when I said at the beginning that he's teaching this because of what we've worked through, you think it's something?
Yes, I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure you've ever answered this way. But it wasn't just to please me. There was a part of personal holiness that you learned from this. Right? I mean,
yes.
Right. Talk about that.
Which part?
I know. It was you felt better at yourself.
Oh, yes, yes. There was a freedom in my spirit. I thought I was free before, but there was a motor running in me that had to get out all the knowledge in me. And it wasn't working. And probably I was shutting down the couple we were counseling because I was answering everything they started to say. They never got through. And so in this Let Us Dance, I could sit there quietly. I could totally listen to this couple. And then I could look at Bruce and not say a word. And that gave him freedom to just go after what he felt in his heart. He never shut me down. He didn't look at me, because if he looked at me, my motor mouth would go again. And so then I could look at him, and I didn't give him the permission, I just was quiet so that he could go and teach.
But you felt more
I was
at
free.
peace with yourself even,
Absolutely.
in that, especially having some confrontations with people that had done us to us, and Ruthie would come and she said, am I that bad? I thought, sometimes. But I want to tell you, that was years ago. Years and years ago. And that when she learned that, the transformation that happened in her life was totally 100% complete. I mean, it's an issue that just doesn't come up, and there's a great balance there, right?
I would say I am still on a journey. I can get with friends.
Waiting on your words, right?
Yes, waiting on my words. I would get with friends years ago, and I'd be quiet because I was so insecure, or I'd overtalk. And then when God set me free in other things, I went the other way. I am so free. Look at all this wisdom I have. I'm going to give it all to you. And what God had to bring me to, sometimes I don't like balance, because the word balance, because you don't want to be too balanced, because God wants to use you in different areas. But in this area, I jumped from one ditch to another ditch, and God had to pull me back and say, listen to me. And so that's where I had to go. Now, some of my friends here, I still get pretty excited when we get together. And sometimes I still talk too much, but it's not
it's not out of the box.
Yeah, it's not out of the box. But in the middle of it, sometimes I say, shh, stop talking so they can talk. God is working with all of us. They were talking in the area of talking and talking too much. And he's saying, if you will listen to me, you'll be free, and you'll hear other people's hearts so much better.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I have something else to say, but I'm afraid I'll get criticized by Keith. Worn out shoe that only the thumb works. And so I want you to stay up here with me. But one of the things that changed me the most was a phrase in the classic book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's a whole chapter on there on listening. And he said, Dale Carnegie said, you will never, ever get someone interested in you by talking about you. You will get someone interested in you by going to their heart and talking about what they want to talk about. And then it will come back to you. And that was a great lesson. That I have a whole other story how that changed my life, but it changed my life. So if you could put on a little bit of music, or how about Ben? You want to come up and just stroke the harp? I say this quite often, but Ruthie and I believe that prayer is not just traditional. It's not just, I want something to change, so I'm going to go and have prayer, and then you forget about it. I believe the prayer in a corporate service, no matter who it comes from, can actually impart the grace you need to go to the next level. It can actually be an impartation of strength, of holiness. And so, like most of the time when we chat, I always want to give someone the opportunity to say, there were some things God highlighted in me, not bad boy, bad girl. You're on a journey, just saying, I want to go to a higher level and steward my words, and because the root isn't talking too much. The root is often a self-focus and insensitivity and not esteeming other people more important than yourself. God rebuked me years ago for giving testimony of myself. There's times to do that in a holy way, but there's times not to do it. And so if you just like prayer and just say, I know that there's a greater level of James chapter 3 of stewarding my words, and you would like to go to that level, you don't have to tell us what it is, whatever, we'll just pray it, and pray that any legal place in the enemy be broken if it's outside of the box. And just come down and we'll pray for you. If there's anybody that wants prayer, come on down right now. Okay. Just go across. Keith, maybe you should come down, not because you talk too much, but in what comes out of your mouth. Yes, I put him up to that. Okay, hallelujah. Anybody else? Don't be shy, even if you're a new person, come up. We're just going to pray a breaking over this. And yeah. There's more. Good. Could you get the mic also? I'm going to, at our conferences, frame from